Long before the first lab was created, long before science could discover, long before any generation could come into that reality, this man literally lived approximately 3,000 years ahead of his generation. But I wonder why no one is talking about this man, the scientist who has been hidden by the blanket of controversy. If you go through Google, you won't even find him being referenced as the father of this scientific discovery. You will hear names, big names, but this man's name has been taken off all through history. Today, we explore the insane story of one of the greatest scientists of all time, who did not just invent physical machines, but what he did changed everything for the whole human race. I wonder why no one talks about him. I wonder why the internet has decided to play silent about this general. I wonder why when I scroll through Google, I can't seem to find references about this man. Is it he wasn't important to them? Is it his discovery will just be abandoned? I want to share with you a story of the forgotten scientist, the man behind one of the most important scientific discoveries of all time, a man whose relevance predates many inventions, an inventor to inventors, a man who stems from a deep root in history. But sadly, this man's inventions have been forgotten. Sadly, no reference at all has been given to this man. Whereas, even before scientific evolution of certain men, like Isaac Newton, born on January 4th, 1643, died on March 20th, 1727. He was an English mathematician and physicist who formulated the laws of motion and universal gravitation and was a key figure in scientific evolution. Now, this scientific enigma literally began as a mystery. So one day, Newton sits under an apple tree and it's believed that the apple falls, and then he asks himself, what force is responsible for this apple living from up to down? And that's how the Newton's law of gravity, which has been able to cause a lot of scientific evolutions, in that most discoveries of science and many inventors are built on these foundational elements that Isaac Newton got to bring forth. Isaac Newton discovered the fundamental principles of calculus, gravity, and the laws of motion, which form the foundation of classical mechanics. He also invented the first practical reflecting telescope, revealing that white light is composed of multiple colors through his experiment with light dispersion. He brought so many revolutions in physics and astronomy, the law of motion, universal gravity, reflecting telescope, optics, and light. In mathematics, he brought forth the intelligence of calculus. To address problems in physics, Newton co-invented calculus, a powerful mathematical tool for analyzing rates of change and accumulation. And also he discovered this important mathematical theorem called the generalized binomial theorem, which became a basis for developing calculus. Then we have a man called Albert Einstein, one of the most intelligent humans that ever existed in our world. On March 14, 1879, a man called Albert Einstein was born, a scientific wonder, a man who literally became like a human machine, who brought about what I can call a scientific revolution and a revival. This single man was able to reshape the concepts of science and the comprehension of many scientific realities, and was even able to question certain things that Isaac Newton had built, and was able to bring certain theories that questioned the potency of scientists before him and put him on a pedestal of greatness, so great that he became a world power. He became a world phenomenon. He became one of the fathers of science, especially of modern day science. Many scientific projects are built on Albert Einstein's laws. He was a German-born theoretical physicist. Albert Einstein's discoveries include the theory of relativity, both spatial and general, and photoelectric effect, the Brownian motion, the mass-energy equivalence, and wave-particle duality, which he didn't directly invent. Einstein did not necessarily directly invent most of the things that he is credited for, but he played a mighty role in the exploring and the expansion of many already established scientific discoveries, and he assisted in the evolution of already established discoveries like the laser system, the GPS system, and nuclear energy. Now, as important as Albert Einstein is, one of the people who maximized his brain and used his brain beyond most humans could even do. Here's where the story gets even more interesting. We also have a scientist who shaped the narrative of our world today, that every time you use the comment, you have to think about this man. Actually, there are two. We have a man called Thomas Edison, and we have a man called Nikola Tesla. Now, Thomas Edison was an American inventor who was born in February 11th, 1847, and of course he died on October 18th, 1910. 1831. He was an American inventor and a businessman, also known for developing phonograph, motion picture camera, and the early versions of the electric bulb. He developed the first practical and commercially viable incandescent light bulb in 1879. Now, the crazy part is this: Thomas Edison obtained 1,093 US patents for his invention, a world record for the time, though his total number of patents worldwide was 2,332. And these innovations covered a vast range of fields, including the light bulb, phonograph, and the motion picture camera, including the kinestoscope and the telephone transmitter, and established the first industrial research laboratory in history, which significantly influenced modern invention and research practices. He also developed the first commercial electric light and power system, crazy right, and improved versions of the telegraph. That will be a story for another time. Now, as important as these people are, we have one scientist who has been forgotten. He is the motherboard of science. I could say that he is one of the greatest scientists of all times, but history has quickly wiped off his name from inventions. Quickly, modern day scientists who are riding on the intelligence of this man have quickly forgotten about him. And this man is no other person but the man Jacob. Let's dive into the story of the brain behind genetic engineering, and let's look at why he was quickly forgotten by the people of this age and this dispensation. Before doing this video, I had to do a quick Google search, and I simply typed the word, was Jacob in the Bible a genetic engineer? And of course the answer was a big no. And they say in the modern sense, Jacob is not considered to be a genetic engineer. You know, these people always want to discredit the ambience of God's people. They say he was rather a patriarch who, in the Bible, through a practical, non-scientific method of selective breeding and observation of animals, increased his flock's colored offspring, an application of early animal breeding that some have linked to some form of applied genetics. And this is found in Genesis 30, where Jacob set up peeled, streaked branches in the water where sheep and goat would breed, and the resulting offspring were streaked, speckled, and spotted, which some argue to be a form of artificial selection. Why would you even argue that this is not genetic engineering? What then is genetic engineering if this is not? Yet the same Google describes genetic engineering to be the process where scientists directly alter an organism's DNA to introduce new traits, removing existing ones, or to change how the genes function. So let's look at the forgotten scientist, the brain behind genetic engineering. His name is Jacob. Now, Jacob is a twin, and his twin brother is called Esau, born to a father called Isaac, who is born from a father called Abraham, and they are from the patriarchal family. Now, Jacob is born in a very controversial time in Bible history and grows up to be a very controversial Bible character. And one day, after he stole his brother's blessing, he found himself in the house of a man called Laban in an attempt to escape from his brother Esau's wrath, because he had just manipulated the system and taken the blessing of his brother. The story only gets more interesting from here, that this man begins to work with Laban, and Laban had to cheat Jacob over 10 times within a space of 20 years. That's approximately the manipulation of his salary once every 2 years. And Laban so much tricked Jacob that when Jacob labored for a wife whose name was Rachel, Laban gave him Leah. That was a trick. And so Jacob got to a point where he had to just download all the possibilities of inventions that dwell within his system. Now, let's quickly go into the inventor Jacob and how this came about. So, because Jacob was being underpaid and his wages were being manipulated, he got into a deal with his boss. He said, you know what, I will take all the animals. The ones that are spotted will be mine, and the ones that are not spotted will be yours. And so Jacob dives into genetic engineering. Life is built on a secret code, a blueprint hidden inside every living being. For centuries, this code was invisible, unknown, until modern science cracked its structure. We call it DNA, the language of life. Today, we know this power as genetic engineering, which is the ability to literally rewrite history itself. From the curing of diseases to reshaping crops, scientists now hold the key to evolution. Here is where it gets more interesting. This story did not begin in the lab. What scientists glory in today and what many scientific discoveries glory in today did not begin in the lab. No, It began in the farm. It began from a young man who was desperate to prove his boss wrong, desperate to survive in an economy that seems to be very unfair, to survive in a system that played him dirty. It began thousands of years ago, even before the discovery of the internet, of certain levels of technology. Right in that farm is found in the pages of the Bible. Long before DNA was literally discovered, of course, it always dwelled in humans because we literally are influenced by our genetic composition. But long before this became a thing to science and its manipulation became a scientific reality, there was a man called Jacob that performed an extraordinary act of genetic manipulation. His name has been forgotten in the pages of science. How sad. Now, how did he get to achieve such a high-class level of intelligence in such an outdated generation in terms of technology? Here's how it went. Jacob began by peeling branches and placing them in watery troughs, closed up on speckled patterns carved into wood, and sheep drinking and mating and giving birth to spotted young. So every time the sheep would drink from that and would mate from that, they would automatically give birth to spotted sheep. Notice that by their genetics, they were never spotted, but because of this genetic alteration that was achieved by the man called Jacob, what they delivered became genetically modified. And this began with Jacob, not as a system to destroy the earth, but as a way to survive an economy that seemed to play him bad. Born from that scientific maneuver, a man literally changed the trajectory and the reality of our present day scientific norms. But no man is talking about Jacob. Now, according to Genesis, Jacob placed spotted and stripped branches in the water where his strongest sheep drank and bred. What followed was nothing short of the miraculous. The flock gave birth to spotted and speckled offspring, and they multiplied rapidly under his care. So Jacob, in essence, manipulated heredity and became the first to practice what we now recognize as genetic engineering. Thousands of years before this term ever existed. And what is the source of such a scientific discovery in a generation over 1,000 years before Christ? We're talking about over 3,500 years ago. How did he get to know this? The thing about Jacob is that Jacob was connected to God, the Almighty God. And Jacob, being the grandson of Father Abraham, who got into a covenant with God, I believe had a stake in spiritual realities. And by Abrahamic covenant with God, God had to give Jacob certain encounters that made a way and paved the way for scientific discoveries that are helping us today mightily and massively. A man literally lived 3,000 years above his generation. So from Jacob's shepherd field to the most advanced labs on earth today, the desire to unlock and guide life's blueprints has never stopped. And so the story of genetic engineering did not begin in the age of technology. It began in the days of Jacob, the days of faith, the days of covenant with God. This is Jacob, the first genetic engineer in history. What do you think about Jacob? Can I hear from you in the comment section? Is he really the first genetic engineer, or is this just an overhyping of a man who is a Bible character? Let me know what you think at the comment section. King speaking. Please, if you have not liked my video, please like, share, and subscribe.